academic world is in a frenzy about a chatbot called ChatGPT, which apparently writes papers, reports and responses on demand. It stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformer, and it was launched on the 30th of November by OpenAI Research Laboratory last year. Let's speak to Arthur Goldstuck. He's the founder of Wide Worx. Arthur, thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. So you penned an article, right, which was published in the Sunday newspapers. Wasn't quite sure whether it was you who wrote it or whether it was the bot. So tell us why the world or the academic world is in a frenzy about this.
Well, I asked the bot to write my weekly column for me, and it did a fairly good job. I had to ask it about 3 questions, and between the 3 questions, it provided all the content necessary for the column. I just then trimmed down what it wrote for me and wrote an introduction and a couple of linking sentences and a brief conclusion. So in effect, the bot wrote my column. And this is what concerns the academic world, because in my case, I was doing it as an experiment and an exercise with full disclosure, explaining what I was doing. But in the world of writing research papers or university papers or school essays, you can ask the bot the same things, and you don't have to acknowledge or admit that you used the bot to write your paper for you.
Sure.
The biggest problem with that is that it's not always accurate because it can't tell fact from fiction. So it goes onto the internet trawling all the information out there and putting together your article for you. Completely original, but not always completely accurate.
Yeah, some could very well argue that you got humans that do that as well, right? With all these accusations of plagiarism going on in the world. But then you also ask or wonder in terms of the consequences. So you've got professors that sit, or you've got whomever is in charge of a department or a subject that sits and has to grade this work, making them what? Redundant?
It's not necessarily so. I really do believe that the academic world needs to change its approach to assignments of this nature. As I've always believed that rote learning and regurgitating facts is not a great way of learning how to use information, and that schools and universities should be looking at the application of information rather than just being able to repeat it. So ChatGPT and similar tools, I think there'll be one from Google very soon, because they're the biggest competitor to OpenAI in this field. All these tools means that people will be able to replicate facts or present facts and context for those facts and arguments around those facts on demand, and using a bot that will be indistinguishable from the real thing, except for one thing. These bots will be far more accurate in language use. They'll be far more eloquent than your average student. So that can be a giveaway, but you can hardly penalize someone for being eloquent. But if they can change their thinking in the academic world to how you apply information, then you can really test people's knowledge of the subject matter and not just knowledge of the facts.
So you'd suggest to embrace it and not to fear it, Arthur?
That's always been my argument with technology. Find ways to make it work for you, and especially one like this that is so disruptive. Use that disruption to make it work for you.
It took 6 seconds for this bot to produce something for you, right? And we told you about several drawbacks to using bots, including lack of understanding of context, which you touched on, lack of creativity, lack of accountability. And so it's also quite quick on its feet.
Yes, indeed. I asked the 3 separate questions, and each one, it took about 6 seconds to produce around 250 words. So if I have a 650-word column, then I just have to type in 3 questions and it produces my column. And it could be on other subjects. This one happened to be about the bot itself and about artificial intelligence doing one's writing for one. But on my online magazine, Gadget, today we publish a review of a smartphone that hasn't come out yet. So we've created a bot character. It's an anagram of Gadget magazine. Her name is Aggie Z Gateman, and she wrote a review of the S23 Ultra from Samsung before it comes out, pulling on or drawing on rumors that were out there what its specs would be. But then it actually got a lot of facts wrong in terms of comparing the current version with the previous edition, the S22 Ultra. And in fact, it got the comparison of the specs between the two wrong, looking at what anyone can see on their phone if they have an S22 at the moment, being patently wrong. So it just showed that it couldn't sift effectively through the facts that were already there. It did produce, however, a very competently written review, and that is published on Gadget today. We believe the first bot reporter to publish a review of a product in South Africa.
That's a beautifully scary thing to know. But what is it? Because like you said, this is causing a stir in the academic world. But what is it that people need to look out for, right? Especially since you don't have to declare. If I then do a research paper, I don't have to tell anybody that that this ChatGPT did it for me. Maybe the information contained within the research paper would be telling very quickly, but it's well written. Yes, that's a benefit, but what do instructors need to look out for?
I do believe that OpenAI will come out with some kind of tool that allows you to run content against the bot to see if it was content produced by the bot. In other words, in the same way that there are now plagiarism tools that all universities use to check whether something is cut and pasted from the internet, there will also be plagiarism tools to check whether something was produced by a bot. So you can't, in reading the content itself, tell that it was produced by a bot, except if a student who is usually sloppy in their grammar and their construction is suddenly very clear and concise and eloquent, then you suspect it. But I do believe it's possible to create a plagiarism checker where you run it through a bot. Certainly the more well-known bots should all allow some kind of facility to allow teachers, lecturers and the like to paste a chunk of content in and ask, did you write this? And it shouldn't be difficult for this technology to produce an answer to that question.
Of course. I think on artificial intelligence recently saw something that was produced by a Nigerian filmmaker and artist where he created elderly people on the runway, magnificent pictures which have since gone worldwide. So for that, I kind of get it. But for this kind of content creation, still needs some convincing. But thank you very much, Arthur Goldstuck, for helping us understand more about artificial intelligence and its impact on content creation moving